Bill's going to read all that stuff. Remind me, I teach a course in political science at Troy University, Southern politics. We in the South have been blessed with very, very colorful politicians over the years. One of them, of course, we have a claim to them in Alabama. I teach my students about Gene Talmadge in Georgia, and Georgia's got Gene Talmadge, and you know, of course, Louisiana's got Huey Long, and you know, we have George Wallace and Big Jim Folsom. And I was talking to Bill earlier about this. He has had an aunt named Janie Wallace, who was a librarian in Brundage, and she was George Wallace's aunt. And his grandmother was Janie Wallace, and it was George Wallace's aunt. And every time I saw George Wallace as a young legislator, he would say, "Steve, you know, I'm kin to all those shepherds and Flemings from the northern part of your county, my kinfolk. You know, Janie Wallace, the librarian in Brundage, is my aunt." So I see Bill Philbin while I think about that. But reading all that stuff, I'm reminded of the most colorful politician we had in the state was Big Jim Folsom. A lot of you don't remember Big Jim, some of you do. I'm 6'6". Now, very seldom I have a picture made with someone taller than me. But I had a picture made with Big Jim when I was a young man. And Big Jim towered over me. Just sounded like a little child, you know. And very intimidating. I'm used to being the tallest one in the picture. And so Big Jim just towered over me. He says, "Flowers, what size shoe do you wear?" I said, "We're size 13, Bill." He said, "Ain't nothing, Flowers. I wear a 17.5 shoe." He was 6'9" and wore a 17.5 shoe. You know, and back then we had no television. You know, there was no entertainment. When Big Jim came to the Court Square in Ozark, it was like, you know, a comedy show going on. He sang with the band. But I was thinking about Bill reading all that stuff about then. You know, Big Jim had a penchant for alcohol. You know, he pretty much stayed drunk his whole second term. You wrote up the Capitol say he's sober days, sober. He liked to go to Mobile on binges. You know, and he'd go to Mobile. That was his favorite place to go drinking, and drinking buddies down there. So, some American Textile Manufacturers Association was meeting in Montgomery. It wasn't just Alabama; it was a national conference. And somebody, and Big Jim was supposed to welcome to the state. Somebody had written a really nice speech to Big Jim to give, like Bill was reading about me, and he got up. He hadn't seen the speech. The troopers had driven him about 100 miles an hour from Mobile to get up there, and he hadn't seen the speech. Someone gave it to him, and of course he was about half drunk. And he got up there reading that speech, and he got to reading it. He says, "I want to welcome y'all to Alabama today. We got 400,000 people employed in the tech industry. It means 60,000 people a day." He said, "I'd be doggone, I didn't know that." He speaks for telling us my anecdotes he hadn't heard about. That's how I did it. You put a dictionary and put the word Big Jim, you see his picture up there. I didn't give it. But I know y'all read out some of it. I can't hold a candle to my good friend Steve Klaus. Steve and I have been friends all of our life. His mom, Miss Ruth, is back here with Jimmy Klaus. My mom and Miss Ruth grew up together in Pike County. She and my mom were best friends. And I remember coming down here when I was a little boy and seeing Steve when he was a little bitty baby. My mom used to bring down here to visit with him. So I've never not known Steve Klaus. I said, and people get us confused. We were in the legislature. He's a lot more handsome than I am. But we had similar names, you know, Steve Flowers and Steve Klaus, and we had a joining district. I forget Steve's either 5 or 6 years. He's 5 years younger than me. We were in the same fraternity in Alabama, so we've been friends all of my life. And y'all got a mighty good representative. He does a good job for Dale County, and I appreciate his friendship. You know, y'all are in the right party, no question about it. You know, I want to share just about 10 minutes now. I've got business y'all want to do with it. People sometimes are curious about historically why Alabama is what it is politically. We are a colorful state. We're a very conservative state. That showed up very clearly in the election on March 13th. We're a very conservative state, very religious state. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm going to make is that if you look at the state of Alabama, the deep South states, 5 deep South states of Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Louisiana, probably Arkansas and Tennessee to a certain extent, the deep South states, the transformation, the partisan transformation in our region, the deep South, the 5 to 7 deep South states, has been the greatest transformation and party change in American political history in the last 50, 60 years. If you can go back to 1960, I mean, y'all can go back that far, 1960, you take a snapshot of Alabama in the fall of 1960, which is now 52 years ago, isn't it? 52 years ago, whatever, 12, yes, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, every elected official statewide in Alabama was Democratic. That was true of every other of our deep South states also. Many people are surprised, no, in 1960, John Kennedy carried Alabama in the presidential election in 1960. A Democratic, liberal, Catholic from the Northeast carried Alabama over Richard Nixon in 1960. Both of our U.S. senators were Democrats, Mr. Hill and John Sparkman. We had 9 congressmen, all 9 of them were Democrats. All 8 of our constitutional officers, our governor was a Democrat, John Patterson was the governor. We're only about 5 Republicans in the legislature. There were that many out of 140 members. That was, you took that shot 50 years ago. You take a picture of the state now, it's just the opposite. And the entire Deep South is just the opposite. 11 presidential elections, GOP candidates carried Alabama 9 and 11 times. Only 1 time was a Democrat carried, Jimmy Carter in 1976, 50 years. He was a conservative Southern Baptist peanut farmer from South Georgia. And that friends and neighbors politics carried him to victory in Alabama. George Wallace carried the state 1 time in 1968. Carried the Deep South as the independent county in 68. But if you go back that far, it's been all GOP since that time. I contend that this election this year, as well as coupled with the 2010 election, last year's election, it was a two-step dance, if you will. I consider that one of the 3 most landmark and pivotal elections, 2010 midterm election, as well as this upcoming fall, as being 3 of the most important election cycles in Alabama political history. Many of you remember the days of Democratic dominance, and a lot of people, especially my students, asked me a question, said, why was Alabama so Democratic? Well, it was because of Reconstruction. You go back to 1876, and for 70 years, 1876 to 1964, the South voted lockstep Democratic for that reason. After the Civil War and after Reconstruction, there was no greater retribution put on any defeated enemy. The United States government has never put the kind of retribution that white Southerners had to endure those 10 years of Reconstruction. They took every white Southerner's land from them, they took their rights away from them, they took everything they had and made them almost subservient to the federal government. They would literally take someone who was termed a carpetbagger, who was someone who was a derelict from Pennsylvania, and make him probate judge of a county. I mean, for 3 times, I did a survey one time on the governor's home counties. We've had 3 governors of Alabama who were from New York, and they actually lived in New York while they were governor of Alabama. That happened during Reconstruction. I mean, the sheriffs of a county would be someone brought in from Pennsylvania who was put out of prison and paid to be sheriff of Winston County or some county. I don't know. So anyway, the 10 years of Reconstruction was so devastating and so bad that white Southerners, once they got their rights back, they said, I'm a Democrat. Because the Democratic Party in 1876 was the one who had freed the Southerners from Reconstruction. So that instilled hatred, or acrimony was so instilled in white Southerners' psyche, it lasted for 70 years, or 90 years actually, from 1876 to 1964. And you would even have, when I first ran for office in 1982, I would have old guys out in the country tell me, says, Steve, my granddad told me 2 things on his deathbed. He said, don't ever sell the family farm, and don't ever vote for a damn Republican. Those 2 things. I mean, I would have that said, that's how instilled that was in the white Southern psyche. And what changed that psyche was in 1964. Reconstruction was number 1, 1964 was number 2. Y'all remember what happened in 64? Lyndon Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act, and he signed that act. He looked at Bill Moyers and some of his cohorts. He said, I just signed the South over to the Republican Party for the next century. And that was a prophetic statement. It was true, it's held true. It said 64, the South has only voted Democratic one time for president in 76. It's trickled down since then. The governor's office changed in 86, about the other southern states changed about that same time. The last bastion of hold of the Democratic Party was broken in 2010. For over 100 years, the Democratic Party had control of the state legislature, but that changed in 2010. The Republicans took control of the legislature, and I think it's there for the rest of my lifetime anyway. I think the Republican Party is the heart and soul of the South. The heart and soul of the Republican Party. It is the party. It's the heart. It's where the party starts now. The same way they counted the South democratically 60 years ago, they count us a Republican now. We won't see a candidate in the fall. Y'all know that, don't you? Of course, the Electoral College consists of only about 8 or 10 states where elections are held across the Electoral College. We're going to be Republican. New York's going to be Democratic. Mississippi's going to be Republican. Georgia's going to be Republican. So they ignore us. They're also going to ignore New York and California. They've been Democratic. So we probably won't see any presidential candidates in the fall, and they come and ask you for some money. They will not campaign in Alabama. It doesn't matter who the Republican nominee is. I spoke to a group up in Pell City the other day, and I was telling them that sort of thing. And I looked at the old guy who's about 85, 90 years old in front, and I said, if Mickey Mouse is a Republican nominee and Obama's a Democrat nominee, you can vote for Mickey Mouse, won't you? He said, well, yeah, I would. So the only question will be whether Alabama goes between 60 and 65%. I think Steve would agree with that. It'll be probably 63, which is a big, big landslide. Which means there'll be no more Democratic office holders in the state. The farm system was wiped out in 2010. Going back to what Bill was talking about, me running for being a page. When I was a young guy, I was Republican. I was a teenage Republican. I was head of the teenage Republicans in the state when I was a high school kid. But when I first ran for office, I had to run as a Democrat to get elected. And I would ask some of my colleagues and say, I'm not really a Democrat, y'all. And some of them say they were. I remember Joe Carruthers was down 231. Carruthers thought he was a real Democrat. I said, because he born up in Scottsboro. And I said, are you really a Democrat? Because I had never voted for a Democrat for president. Still never have. I've never voted for a Democrat for president in my life. Even in 76 but I was Democratic also. That's just the way we did it. And I had to tell the girl state delegates, I spoke to girl state delegates last year, and I told them, I gave them this admonition. I said, when I was y'all's age and I attended Moy State, I was Republican, but I knew I had to run as a Democrat. Now I will tell y'all, if you're a Democrat, you got to run as a Republican. It's just the opposite. You may be a Democrat, but you can't run as a Democrat if you elected statewide. But I'm glad to see this big turnout. I know y'all got some business y'all got to accomplish tonight, so I won't keep y'all. But I'll be glad to answer any questions. I think the April 24th runoff will be a low turnout. I think it'll be one of the lowest. You only got one race on the ballot. You don't have any local races. And I watch statewide when those votes are coming in. Local races still drive the vote a lot of times. I look at different pockets around the state where they were hot. So y'all have some certain runoffs. Y'all got some runoffs in this county. So y'all will have a big turnout in Dale County. But that's what drives the races is local races. For probate judge, circuit judge, county commissioner. And I looked at pockets around the state. I could see the votes. There's almost a correlation between where there's good local races and not many good statewide races. I know y'all got other things you got to do. I'll be glad to answer some questions y'all got. If Steve can tell y'all about legislation, I'll be getting all that. But I'm glad to see Miss Ruth and Miss Jimmy here tonight. Kay's back in Pennsylvania. Good to have her back home. But anyway,
I would like to hear your take as far as you were talking about history and where we've been and where we're at now with this immigration law that was passed last year. And of course, they say they're trying to tweak it, but I really think they're trying to gut it right now. But as I said in the hearings last week, the people that were speaking against it were saying that we were returning to the 60s. And as it was with the segregation and all of that. How do you perceive?
I think that's an overreach. I think that, you know, other states, I sort of resent Alabama getting the black eye like we have, because Georgia passed it in the law. I mean, there's not much difference in Georgia's law and our law. And nobody was castigating Georgia's being a racist state. Alabama got castigated. About 10 states passed that legislation. It really should have been a federal issue. It really shouldn't be done by states, but once it is done, and I don't know that changing that much. Steve can tell you more about that, but I think they're making it more enforceable and more workable, especially on stopping someone just arbitrarily, just for arbitrary reason. I think that you got to have reasonable cause to stop them now. And I think a lot of law enforcement people will not enforce them for fear of lawsuit in that regard. So there are some changes but I don't think the legislature or government are backing off the idea of that. But I don't think that's not the same thing. And he would participate in the civil rights struggle in the 60s, did not compare that same thing. So I don't think it's the same. We have gotten some bad publicity nationwide. And they're harking back to the era of Any other questions? Y'all are in the right party. I tell you that much. I think there's no looking back now. I say this, I think going back to the historical slant I put on it, you can almost say this, that Lyndon Johnson drove a stake through the Democratic Party's heart in 1964, and Barack Obama nailed the final nail in the coffin. I think the Democratic Party is dead now. I'm not telling that to civic groups. I think there's one party in the state now, and the elections are going to be held in the Republican primary. Whoever wins the Republican primary will be elected statewide in Alabama. I think for the foreseeable future, at least my lifetime, something could change in the future. But we are not the rest of the country. You know, this election will be very close in the fall. We are more conservative. You know, towns like Ozark and Troy, where Norman Rockwell were mainstream America when I was growing up. We're not anymore. Most people in the country live in places like New York or Los Angeles or San Antonio. They're melting pot. We're a melting pot country. And so when you look at the population of the country, we are not a waspish country anymore. We're just a very different country nationwide. When we get outside of Alabama and the deep south, people aren't as conservative as we are, and not as religious as we are, and they don't look like us. So it's not the same thing. It'll be very close in the fall. I think the key is Romney's got to get somebody to get on the ticket. I think the guy from Florida can. I think he's the obvious candidate because Florida is so important in this election. If you look at the Electoral College map, and he's very conservative, and he's Hispanic. Hispanic vote is critical. It's a swing vote. It's going to be the swing vote in Florida. It's going to be the swing vote in Nevada. It's going to be the swing vote in New Mexico. Those are all swing states. Any other questions? Romney's the best candidate against Obama, by the way. He may not have been the most popular candidate. Good to be with y'all.
Thank you.